So our next speaker, Ben Cloutier, from the ECHO Institute, is going to be talking about the power of storytelling, which was just highlighted as an important component of sustainability and getting funding for ECHOs. And I think when you hear his story, you will feel like I did, which is it's amazing that he is here today and exists today to be able to share his expertise with us. And I can guarantee you there will be lessons in there for each and every person in this room that will be valuable to you in your ECHO journeys. So with that, I welcome Ben up to the stage.
Thank you, Leah. And good morning, everyone. I don't know about the rest of you, but this week has been pretty inspiring for me. We've heard from some really amazing speakers, and yesterday we heard from Mr. Sanjay Purohit, and he challenged us. He said that we should be scaling up ECHO to reach 3.5 billion people around the world, those people living in poverty around the world. And as I left that talk, I started thinking about what are the tools we need to do that. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of creativity. And we're going to need the iECHO platform, which is out there, so go find out more about that. But I started thinking about stories, and I'm going to make the pitch to you today that we all need to become better storytellers. And I want to start with my own story. When I was growing up, I heard a lot of stories from my parents. My dad, he started reading to us when we were little kids, right before we'd go to bed. He loved to do that, and I remember Beowulf, I remember the Canterbury Tales, I remember Narnia and Harry Potter and a bunch of other stories that inspired me. They all had an impression on me, but it was other stories when I was growing up that really stuck with me, and those were stories about my family. And that's why I'm up here today. The story I'm going to tell you really was formative for me, and I hope that by the end of this talk, I'll leave you with an idea of just how powerful your own stories can be in growing our movement together. When my grandmother was 6 years old, she became a refugee. She was living in Poland, and the Nazis and the Soviets had just invaded. Her father was a member of the Polish government, and the Nazis had put a bounty out for him, dead or alive. So one morning, my grandmother was woken from her bed by her father. She was told to choose one toy to take with her. She said goodbye to some of her loved ones who she never saw again. And she was put in a car, and she left her home forever. My Nana survived. She made it through a harrowing journey across Eastern Europe, driving through wheat fields to dodge strafing German planes, hiding in the back of goat carts, dodging U-boats on ships traveling around Africa. She experienced desperate hunger and dreadful fear. But in the end, my grandmother and her family made it to England to safety. And during the war, her father served in the Polish government in exile. But after the war, the Soviets had taken control of Poland, and they couldn't return home. So they settled in England and started from scratch. She grew up, she made it through school, and she wanted to go into service to support her homeland. So she moved to West Berlin and began working for Radio Free Europe. She also had dual citizenship, so she had easier access to East Berlin, and she was talked into becoming a CIA courier. So she had quite a time. And it was during her time there in Berlin that she met my grandfather. He was a young U.S. Army intelligence officer. And after they married and my dad was born, they relocated to the U.S., and this is them on their wedding day in Berlin. My grandfather's life was a little strange too. It took some unexpected turns. He was born in a poor family in New England, and his life's dream was to become a teacher, but he was never going to be able to afford to go to college on his own. So he joined the Army, and he went to university on an Army scholarship. His dreams of eventually becoming a teacher were dashed when war got in the way. When they returned to the U.S., he soon had to turn around and go straight to Vietnam. He served 3 combat tours in Vietnam and served his whole career in the Army. My grandparents' experiences had an impact on me very early in life. Their dedication to service and their sacrifices gave me a strong urge to serve a higher cause and to work for a more just world. The story of their lives became a powerful idea in my mind. And the narrative I built became so powerful that it influenced my decisions as I grew up. And then I watched my parents. This is them on their wedding day. My mom, who dedicated her career to helping abused and neglected children, and my dad, who spent so many late hours in the office doing pro bono legal work, leading Boy Scout troops on the weekends, volunteering for nonprofits, helping families in need, and so much more. Watching my parents just added to that story for me. And before I knew it, there was no question in my mind that my life would also be about service. And I don't think there's anyone in this room who hasn't been driven by a story. And in fact, I'm 100% sure that you've all been driven by a story. So we're going to do a little activity here. Who has heard Dr. Aurora's founding of ECHO talk? Yeah, have you guys heard the TED Talk? You've heard him do the pitch in person? Great, I thought so. And we've all been inspired by that story. For 20 years, Dr. Aurora has told that story again and again and again and again. But look at how powerful it's been. It's driven a movement that brings millions of people together around the world. And it's brought us all into this room today. I think I have a slide of Dr. Aurora here somewhere. I may be having some, oh, there we go. Okay. But it's not just Dr. Aurora's story that's powerful in this room. I think every one of you has a story to tell. And I think all of our partners around the world have a story to tell. I think those stories can inspire, I think they can persuade, and I think they can drive change. Now, I want to do another little activity with you guys, and I want to pause for a second. I want each of you to think about how your work has changed the life of a patient or a practitioner, or how it's changed your whole community. You all have a story in your minds? I see Nada Fadul there, so I know she has a story. Well, we're going to come back to that, so don't forget what your story is. We've heard a lot of other stories this week. Dr. Fadul's was one of them. We heard from Dr. Kishore Iyer this morning. And we heard from one of our virtual presenters, and if you haven't heard her talk yet, her name is Joy Mavumbi. So go on the app, find her talk. It's amazing. Her and her team are helping HIV-infected mothers in Zimbabwe turn their diagnosis into an opportunity to educate others in their community so they can get help and get the treatment they need. And you're going to hear a few more stories this week, but there are many more out there. And for the last few years, my team and I have started to document some of these stories that are out here in our ECHO community. We've captured the story of Dr. Terry Vick, who you heard from this week, and his team. They're extending cancer care to underserved regions of Kenya, and he told the story of that little boy that they helped. They found that mass in his stomach and figured out through ECHO a diagnosis and got him treatment. There are a lot more out there. You can read them on our website. You can go see them on social media, but those are just the tip of the iceberg. Do you all remember the story that I asked you to think about? I hope it's still there for you. I think every single one of those stories is inspiring. I think that your work through ECHO has changed lives. And it's time for you to tell those stories, to help the world understand how powerful a tool ECHO can be in changing and saving lives. How has your program helped a patient? How has your program changed a life? How has it helped your community? If we can all lift up the stories that show how our work helps them, we can use the power of stories to change minds. Just like the story of my family has driven my life's mission, or just like Sanjeev's story has convinced thousands of people to take up ECHO, your story could convince a colleague. It could convince a policymaker. It could convince a funder or a hospital administrator. So I'm challenging each of you, next time you're going out to do your work, when you need to convince someone, go and use it in your work. Try it out at the next meeting you have to go to, just like Sanjeev does when he meets with someone. Your story can be fuel for this movement and this community. And with thousands of powerful stories to show, we can show the world what we can accomplish. We can make our impact exponential. And so, the next time you're out there, give it a try. Tell people how your work is helping patients, how it's helping communities, how it's helping the world. We can show people how impactful ECHO is for the millions of people we need to reach, or the billions that Mr. Purahead has challenged us to reach. And if you have a story you want to tell this week, I hope that you'll stop by our story booth, which is at the bottom of the convention center. It's not only an opportunity to get your story out there a little bit, but it's also an opportunity for you to begin to practice. So the next time you need that story, when you go out there, because I know you're going to go out there and give it a try, you'll be ready. And for me, coming back to the story of my family, 50 years after my grandfather fought a war in Vietnam, I was able to visit with our friends from Vietnam. They're here with us today. And I got to reflect that 50 years after my grandfather's dreams of becoming a teacher were dashed because of the war he had to fight in Vietnam, I get the opportunity to go there and help transform lives with our friends and colleagues. Stories really do have the power to transform lives. What's your story? Thank you.